Hey everybody, welcome to Friends of the Force, a Star Wars talk show. I am your host Brad, and this is From a Certain Point of View, our interview series where we highlight and celebrate the stories of the Star Wars fandom. On today's episode, our guest is the author of Star Wars Women of the Galaxy. She's also a host and entertainment reporter for StarWars.com, IGN, and Nerdist, the latter of which she is also the managing editor of. So without further ado, let's find out from a certain point of view what Star Wars means to Amy Ratcliffe.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
I am pleased to welcome Amy Ratcliffe to the show. Amy, how's it going today?
It's going really well. Thank you very much for having me on to talk some Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's all we can do in these desperate times when we just need peaceful moments to really take in the things that we love and cherish them, because it's really what gets us through, you know?
Yeah, any joyful things.
Exactly. So to get us started today, would you mind giving our listeners an introduction to yourself and where you lie within the Star Wars fandom?
Yeah, absolutely. As you very kindly mentioned in that flattering intro, I wrote Star Wars Women of the Galaxy. I came to Star Wars a little late in life, and really fell in love with it through the Clone Wars. And that kind of helped me. Like it was actually, writing about the Clone Wars on my personal blog and talking about it on social media is kind of what helped me figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, and be what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so I very much come up in Star Wars fandom and then my writing career at the same time. So Star Wars is kind of just linked with that in a way that I can never separate, for better or worse, usually for better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I've loved, if I wouldn't have connected with fellow Clone Wars fans and Star Wars fans back when I first joined Twitter, I don't know, 11 years ago, and just encountering that community where I didn't feel weird, or I could just fangirl and flail and nobody judged me. I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't found that. So I'm grateful for Star Wars, in addition to my just passion for that universe, that galaxy.
You've been in the trenches for quite a while, 11 years on Star Wars Twitter. That is definitely a long time, and just a testament to your fandom. And you've probably seen a lot of things. I mean, that's going back to right around the Disney acquisition of Star Wars. So definitely some great times to be experiencing a ton of new things that are happening. And for you, being a Clone Wars fan, where the Lost missions came out back in 2013 as well. And now we got it back in our lives one more time. So it's just kind of, it's all cyclical in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. It just all kind of feeds into each other. And every Clone Wars still, I kind of forget that we have it back because it just never seemed like it would happen. So currently, as they air, it's every Friday night. I'm like, oh, that's right. We have a new episode of Clone Wars. Just what a gift.
Yeah, only for Star Wars would I get up at 6 a.m, an hour earlier than I need to give myself time to both watch the episode and process it afterwards.
I respect that because I see people talking about that for Clone Wars and definitely for Mandalorian, friends on the East Coast who would get up, either stay up until 3 a.m. or get, 3 a.m. their time, I think, or just really late when I'm like, I'll watch it when I get home from work. I'm sleepy and old, so.
So I want to talk a little bit more about your history with Star Wars. And you said the Clone Wars is really special to your heart. And I know you're a huge fan of Ahsoka Tano. So did you want to speak more to just what a character like Ahsoka Tano and the Clone Wars means to you and your Star Wars fandom?
Yeah, absolutely. I first saw Star Wars when the original trilogy was re-released in the late 90s, and I was in high school. And I liked them. I checked them out at the urging of my high school boyfriend. One of the few great things I got, maybe one of the only good things that came out of that relationship. And then I watched the prequel trilogy, and I liked them, but they didn't really click for me in the same way, that around that time maybe like SG-1 was. I think that was roughly around then. And soon Battlestar Galactica. And then Clone Wars came along. And I loved seeing that Anakin had this Padawan, and that was George Lucas's decision to give him this female character Padawan, who, as everybody mentions, and even Ashley mentions herself, like she was a brat when she first showed up. She was a little bit getting Ahsoka at first was a little annoying, but I still liked how sassy she was, especially because the only really sassy Jedi we'd seen before that is Anakin. Qui-Gon a little bit, but more just Anakin, that like
super
flagrant,
sassy.
Like, yeah, truly, just
He's got an attitude. Yeah,
such an attitude. So I kind of liked seeing him meet his match, and I didn't like love the movie, the Clone Wars movie, but once the series started and I got to know the clones and see more of Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship and see this different side of Anakin that Ahsoka brought out, I was hooked. And then as Ahsoka, grew up and learned to be a guardian of peace while she was, or tried to learn how to be a guardian of peace while she was fighting a war, she just became this really fascinating character and learned and made mistakes that cost the lives of clone troopers. She was to be put to be and put in charge of leading a battle or leading any kind of thing that's more than a party at that age, which is unfathomable to me. And she just tried, and Anakin was there to reassure her or to not scold her, but to guide her when she messed up. And yes, it was really connecting with her just earnest desire to do good, and then watching her slowly, as season 5 came to an end, realize like, I don't, maybe this Jedi thing's not so much for me. Like this,
right.
The galaxy maybe doesn't think of them the same way that they think of themselves in the Order. And I thought that was when I first watched it, I remember I watched that final episode. I was at Emerald City Comic Con, and I had stayed in the hotel that morning because that's when it was still aired on Saturday mornings.
Oh,
And I was
bless. Great
eating
time.
right? I was eating a glazed donut. It's also crystal clear because when she walked away, I was like, wait, what? And then shortly
Drop the
thereafter,
donut.
like, right? It said crumbs everywhere. But then shortly after, I'm like, yeah, you go, girl. Like, the Jedi made some terrible decisions, and then we're all like, oh, let us gaslight you a little and say like this was your trial. And it's like, no. So I
Not
really
about that.
No. So I really just respected her journey and her throughout that, and just found her to be such a persistent, hopeful character who just and continues even after Clone Wars just to do her best to help whoever needs her.
Yeah, absolutely. I think persistence a great word to describe Ahsoka, and you got to imagine the kind of pressure that she's under, being the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker, who is allegedly the chosen one. I feel like that
Right.
is a
I
high
never thought about
expectation to
that.
live up to, and it's like, how do I deal with that, being such a young Jedi coming into this world, fighting this war, and also having to like live up to these very lofty expectations, and then for her to walk away from the Order takes a huge amount of strength. So what has it been like for you now that the Clone Wars are back, to see that continuation and her now literally going to almost like the deepest place within herself, literally in the underworld, is kind of metaphorical in a way, to discover who she is without the Order, and then like where that might lead in the next couple episodes to close out the series, which is crazy that's ending soon.
Right.
It's insane.
I feel like it just started.
Yeah, right.
But it's interesting to see her back because it's been 7 years for us since she walked away from Anakin and the Jedi Order, and in the galaxy far, far away timeline, it's just been a short period. I don't think we know exactly, but it's clearly pretty fresh. And I find it really interesting, especially, Order 66 hasn't happened. The Jedi are still, kind of business as usual. But Ahsoka, when she meets Rafa and Trace, it's not like she's like, hey, guess what? I was once a Jedi. Like, this is why I know how to do all these things. She kind of, she uses the Force in front of them, but, kind of in a way that can be explained away if you're not looking for that. So it's kind of hard in some ways to see her like have to wrestle with, she's left the only life she's known. She left Anakin, who she refers to as a brother in her first episode back, which
Ugh,
made me just, just got my heart.
right.
Because
Teared
I'm like,
up.
yeah, right? Because they were really close. And that's the other part of what she had to walk away from. Not only the structure and the day to day, as she knew it and had known it for a long time, but her relationships. I mean, clearly, like we know because of what's coming up, that the Anakin still keeps in touch with her somehow.
Hmm.
But it's not like she's making regular holo calls to check in on the old Jedi buddies.
Right. It's different. It's like when you
Yeah.
revisit your hometown after you leave, things aren't the same no matter how much you want them to be the same. I moved a lot growing up, so I experienced that quite often, and I think in a way that's why I relate to Ahsoka in some fashion because she left her stomping grounds, now she's trying to come back, and it's not going to be the exact same thing as before based on her own perception of the Jedi and the perception of those towards her for having left.
Right. That's absolutely true because I think while Anakin came to an acceptance about it, what does Yoda think? What
Yeah.
did the others think? So it's hard, but like to watch her have to like find this new path, to stumble kind of into a situation where there's crime involved and make the best of it. But I'm
Yeah.
also proud of her for she's resilient and even still, in the midst of capers, running around the grimy underworld, she is looking out for herself as far as surviving, but is really looking out still for other people and just
Hmm.
immediately like jump to helping Trace. And I'm like, yeah, that's what Ahsoka does.
Yeah. She's selfless, and I love that about her. For you, what are some of the greatest joys being a Star Wars fan that this franchise has brought you throughout your long time history with it? I mean, you've done so much. You've again written Women of the Galaxy, which we'll get to shortly. You've hosted the Twin Suns stage at Celebration twice now, I believe.
Three
Hopefully,
times.
maybe come three times. So you've clearly done so much. Really, what has been the biggest joy that it's brought you, and why do you think it can connect with so many different people across so many different cultures and almost make us feel like one family?
It's funny that mentioned like surviving Star Wars Twitter for 11 years because there are certainly times when I have exercised my mute button liberally um, in recent years. But overall, my absolute favorite thing about Star Wars, sorry, that's my cat Ahsoka, who's like, "Are you talking about
Speaking of
Ahsoka? Is
which,
it me?" Um,
we're cat friendly here on the show, so that's a good thing.
okay, good, very good, because she's being loud for no reason. Um, but my favorite thing about it, being in this fandom and discovering Star Wars has truly been the people, whether it's, talking with people on Twitter and then later meeting them in person at Star Wars celebrations. It's going to Star Wars celebrations, and no matter what state I think the fandom's in, like the people I encounter at celebration are always so joyful and enthusiastic. And in my experience, I know I can't speak for everyone, but in my experience, people have just been unfailingly kind and willing to share what they love about Star Wars in a way that is inclusive and not gatekeeper-y,
Hmm.
gatekeeping, yes, that way.
Sounds right.
And so yeah, through celebration, through meeting, just because that's when you talk about like the kind of feeling like Star Wars brings us together, you feel that acutely at celebration. Like it's just like you're constantly in a room of joy. And when it's a big panel, if you're in the room, I remember when the return of Rex was announced,
Oh,
Star Wars Anaheim, I think, for Star Wars Rebels and Star
yeah.
Wars Anaheim, Celebration Anaheim. And you could just feel like it's a tangible, like almost buzz that is just such a high to be around. And same when they announced the return of Clone Wars at Comic-Con. So I've enjoyed just being part of that wave, as well as like the connections I've made with other fans and the opportunities I've had to talk to just really tremendously kind, wonderful people like Steve Sansweet and talking about Rancho Obi-Wan or visiting Rancho Obi-Wan. And gosh, there are so many that I know I'm forgetting. Ashley Eckstein, like, has been a pal and just supported me so much from when I started my kind of writing journey. She really helped me out. So that's kind of the other
Mhm.
side of, like, even the person who plays Ahsoka is amazing.
Yeah.
So I've been fortunate to have a really, to do podcasts with friends about Star Wars. I did Full of Sith for years, a while, and I do Lattes with Leia with my best friend Drea. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of those great moments of connecting with other people. In addition to, we have these stories that are timeless and often, but not always, mythic and incredible, and just lend themselves to so many everyday life situations.
hmm And clearly, without Star Wars, you might not have gotten on the path of being a writer. And you originally had a Clone Wars blog, and you kind of realized at that point you wanted to be on that writing path. So, what has that path been like for you up until now? At the point where you're, the managing editor at Nerdist. Welcome back, by the way.
Thank
We're
you.
very excited to see that. And just what are some of the challenges that have come along the way, and how have you really just made your own belonging within this career, and what has it meant to you, and how close is it to your heart?
Yeah, it's been a long road. I think I started my personal blog in like 2008, maybe 2009, about when I started Twitter. And I really, when I realized, I'm like, oh, this is actually what I really want to do, is talk about all these geeky things I love and engage with others about that. So I really put my all, even though it was my own blog and I was making no money, put my all into putting up a bunch of posts, keeping on a regular schedule, having a variety of like styles of articles, so that if one day like I got to talk to an editor, I'm like, here are my samples. Like, I'm doing my best. I'm trying to make it as professional as I can on my little corner of the internet. And through Twitter, I started to connect with like my editor at IGN, Eric Goldman. He was the person, I think I got one of my first paying writing gigs from him. And he just took a chance on me because he'd read my blog and we'd talked on Twitter about probably Star Wars, but maybe some other nerdy thing. And then I just kept slowly chipping away. And because at the time I had a full-time job in pet food, of all things. And so I was doing my blog on the side and really working way too many hours, more hours than was healthy. But eventually I built up enough paying work, like through IGN and Nerdist, later StarWars.com, and a few different sites, so I could leave pet food. And I did that full time for a while, just freelance for this sound like almost not everyone, but almost everyone who would give me money. Because it's not a well-paying, like when you're freelancing, it's hard. And I would pick up marketing work sometimes, or copywriting, anything it took. And eventually that led to getting a full-time gig at Nerdist as an associate editor, which led to managing editor, and all of that, like working with Lucasfilm both on the StarWars.com side and also on the reporter side, where I work with their publicity team regularly, helped me just be kind of front of mind in some way, too, so that when the opportunity for Star Wars Women of the Galaxy came along, they, through my publisher Chronicle, reached out and suggested me. And that was incredible. It's still an email I can't believe I got, and it's led to more Star Wars book opportunities, which I can hopefully announce soon. And I feel so grateful that I get to do something. I mean, to get to do something still work, but something I enjoy
hmm
and feel strongly about. And yeah, would not have, I don't think would have stumbled into this path without the Clone Wars, without
Yeah.
Star Wars.
It truly is so great when you can take the thing that you love, even though it might be a struggle for some time and you have to make ends meet as best you can to eventually make it a full-time thing where you become more comfortable with what you're doing, and new opportunities start to spring up. And I'm on the edge of my seat. You say
Yeah.
maybe some future book opportunities from you, and I'm excited to see what those might be. But speaking of Women of the Galaxy, so for those of our listeners who aren't familiar, it is a book celebrating 75 female characters in Star Wars. It has over 100 illustrations by 18 female and non-binary artists. So this came out October 2018. It's been about a year and a half-ish now,
Wow.
Amy. So, what has the reception to this book been like? It's such a beautiful book. I think it really celebrates something so cherishable in the Star Wars universe and something that we need to bring more light to and just celebrate the women of the galaxy, and especially characters like Rey and Ahsoka and Leia. So what has it been like for you since this book has been out, and how have you seen it resonate with fans?
First of all, I can't believe that it's been a year and a half, because in some ways it just feels like it just came out, or that I just wrote it. I don't know. Time. What is time?
Right. It's October already.
Oh my gosh. No. So in the time since it's been published, I kind of did an initial push for it at New York Comic Con the month that it was released, and then got to do some signings and have done a celebration in Chicago since then. And all of that is leading up to say that the fans I have talked to, the Star Wars fans, and the people I've encountered who know Women of the Galaxy, they've all, other than some trolls on the internet, the real life people have all been so wonderful and so excited. And especially, it's always fun to watch people when they see the book for the first time. Because, for example, my publisher Chronicle brought a bunch. They brought some. They thought a bunch to Celebration Chicago, and at that point, the book had been out for I think 6 months, and we passed a holiday period, so they were kind of unsure, if everybody who wanted a copy kind of already got one, and they sold out. And Her Universe had copies, and they sold out, and so did Rancho Obi-Wan. So it's really the kind of book that if you're intrigued at all, I think once people see it and see the stunning art that features not only characters we've seen a lot, like Leia or Padme, and they're incredible and important, but it was also really delightful to pull in characters like Afra from the comics, or like Nora Wexley from the novels. And
love Nora Wexley.
She's so cool.
One of the unsung heroes.
Truly. So to pick up the book and see the art of those characters, and not just art on a something I really appreciate about Lucasfilm in this book is, the characters do need to look a certain way, but they didn't make the artists match any kind of model or style. So every artist who participated got to bring their own touch to it, their own look. So I think that's a huge draw of the book, and people have talked about that. And I've heard some really lovely stories from parents who will take a profile of a character and read it per night, was reading it kind of as a bedtime story, one at a time. And sometimes I still once in a while will get emails out of the blue about somebody talking just that the book is important to them, or it's important to them to show their kids, be they boys or girls, to be yes, female characters look important. It's just been really sweet. I've cried a lot of very touched tears over people's responses, and they mean so much. That experience has taught me that if you ever like an author's work, oh, I don't want to bug them, tell them, because whatever it is, they will that is so appreciated. It's appreciated that you support the work, period, of course, but that little extra, even if it's just a tweet, it really is a day it's really a day brightener.
Yeah. I think it's a really empowering book as well, and just again seeing the impact that women have had on the galaxy, and just having a book that can really highlight those contributions in a meaningful and unique way, in a diverse way, from, like you said, all these different styles of artists that can really add their own touch to the Star Wars galaxy, and it's kind of becomes a conglomerate of different viewpoints, which is exciting.
Yeah, and I think it was really important to include so many different artists, and I like thinking of it as as someone who loves fan art and had followed a lot of these artists. That many of them do professional work too, but certainly I've seen some of Jen Bartel's Star Wars fan art, and so for her to do the cover was amazing. But anyway, when I flip through it, I feel like this is like a beautiful, gorgeous Star Wars fan art Tumblr come to life and more professional. I does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I want people to know I highly regard fan art. I don't think as professional as being better than.
Right.
That's just how and it's beautifully designed. Like Chronicle made it like the cover. I feel like it glows.
Yeah, absolutely. That Rey art is it's amazing. What was one of your favorite characters to write about? And as a follow-up question to that, was there anybody that you wrote about that really surprised you, or maybe you grew an appreciation for that you didn't have before until you put pen to paper?
Oh yes, let me think, because it was definitely, even though I keep up on the books as best as I can, the comics as the best I can, but to a much lesser degree than the books. I had a lot in my head, but it was still a very research heavy book. So I got to revisit a lot of beloved stories. So I'm trying to remember. I know I've talked about Durla Pitus a lot, but I love her. I included her. She is seen in The Last Jedi on Canto Bight, though she never speaks, but she has a short story in the Canto Bight novella that I think is called Canto Bight, or called Wine of Dreams by Mir Grant. And that story just captivated me, but especially like seeing Durla, like here's a sommelier, savvy businesswoman playing this very elaborate, manipulative game in Canto Bight. And I'm like, this is not a character I've seen in Star Wars before. Like you've seen underworld people, we have like Mama the Hutt, who's clearly probably pulling some strings, but no one like Durla. So I loved getting to write about her. I advocated for her to be in the book, because I was like, she's cool. I admire her.
Yes, that's the great thing about Star Wars. You get so many of these tiny background characters who you don't know a lot about, but once you get that one story, they can truly captivate you in a way you didn't anticipate.
Yeah, right. And that was something, even I kind of knew, but digging into the research and getting as minute as I could, there are like lots of different careers in Star Wars, which is fun for me to see. Like you kind of, have a gemologist with Lyra Erso, barkeeps. It just, I know there are more, but I'm spacing. But that was something that was really kind of fun to explore, because I think about the Resistance and the First Order, or the Rebellion and the Empire, and not always the person who owns the laundromat, apparently, like Rafa does on Coruscant in Clone Wars.
Right, that's a new one.
I was like, wait, is that a laundromat?
Hey, I guess people in the galaxy need their clothes clean too, I guess. I wonder if she's had any Jedi robes washed in that facility at some point.
I wonder now. I'm like, but wait, what are the Jedi temples? Do they have their own laundry room, and what does it look like?
They use the Force.
That'd be amazing.
I would love to see that scene.
Excuse me, Lucasfilm, if you could please give us an all-important laundry scene.
Yes. And they have to be singing songs by ABBA at the same time, which I feel like would be really entertaining. I'm just thinking of like...
I love the way you think. Makes me want to watch Mamma Mia.
I know. I just saw a Mamma Mia thing today, and I was like, we need a Star Wars musical at some point. It needs to happen.
Oh, what a delight that would be.
Absolutely. Well, to kind of wrap up here, so I don't take up too much more of your time, I would like to ask you a couple rapid fire questions, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Perfect. I know this is kind of an ever-changing thing. For me, at least, it depends on my mood or time of the year, but what is your favorite Star Wars film at this point, or one that just really speaks to you?
At this point, The Last Jedi. For sure. Empire is usually, that's my mood most of the time, but just been feeling some really strong Last Jedi love the past few months.
Yeah. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, that's just a movie. A uplifts my soul.
Yeah, it was on TNT last night, and as soon as it ended, another Star Wars started. I was like, oh, there's another one on. And it was just The Last Jedi again. And I was like, welp, not going to bed.
Yes! You're like, I need to watch it.
Again, more. What's your dream Star Wars project that you would like to see in any format? It could be TV, movies, a book.
Well, the musical is pretty high up there now that we mentioned that. But my ultimate is I would love to see an on-screen adaptation, whether it's a limited series TV thing on Disney Plus or a film from Lost Stars by Claudia
Ooh,
Gray.
yeah,
I
that would
love
be
me
great.
some romance, right? Like I love
Yeah.
romance novels. I love Star Wars, and that kind of combines some of the aspects between the two. And
Hmm.
give me more smooching on screen in Star Wars.
I will never say no to more kissing in Star Wars. Honestly,
Right.
it's needed. Romance. It's a love story in space. Gotta see it.
Yes, more
Absolutely.
smooching.
That would be fantastic. I know I was watching a Funko interview with you back from this last year's celebration, and you had mentioned that you really are fond of resource and making of books. And obviously today the Rise of Skywalker art of book came out, but is there any book that you've collected over the years that you really cherish? Or is like your go-to collectible that you might show off if someone, hops over to your place and you're like, look at this.
Oh, you know what? I have two. I'm going to cheat. Kind of three, but two are related. One is Sculpting a Galaxy. That it's by Lauren Peterson, I believe. That's a beautiful collection, a big coffee table size book about the making of many of the aliens and ships and everything like that from the prequel and original trilogy. My follow up, and I'm actually just going to make it one, is Dressing a Galaxy, which is
Mm,
Trisha. It showcases Trisha Bigger's incredibly stunning work for the prequel trilogy in great detail. And I just, like, I'm not a costumer, I don't make things, but I sure love to drool over some fancy embroidery and some really
hmm.
like just cool anecdotes too. So those two are
Yeah.
my beloves.
Do you have a favorite Star Wars costume? This is just a side question I wasn't anticipating, but I'm curious.
Ooh, probably let me think. It's a Padme one. Oh, you know what? It's her Naboo pilot costume. Of all her, I know she has a lot ones that are a lot more elaborate, but the Naboo pilot disguise that she wears, I love that. Like if I could
Yeah.
cosplay any of her, if I could cosplay actually probably any Star Wars character, I think that one would be really fun. That
Yeah.
particular outfit.
Awesome. I know you're very passionate about coffee, as your website says. And I think you previously hosted a podcast called Lattes with Leia.
I still do,
Still do?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
perfect.
So I
So
can't drink coffee right now, and it's been sad.
yeah, well, do you have any go-to comfort drinks that you keep handy when you're writing or when you're doing your day job, especially now during times when you might have more control over that, being in your own home and getting to make your morning drink? Anything that really gets you through the day?
Yes, when I'm permitted to have caffeine, my favorite thing is a Highlander Grog coffee brew from Stoff's Coffee. It's a coffee roaster based in Ohio, where I'm from. So good, highly recommend any of their coffees. But now that I'm currently on the caffeine-free train, my favorite is a Tazo juniper mint honey herbal tea.
Wow, that sounds really good.
It's so good. It's helping me adjust to that caffeine-free life.
Yeah. What is next in one of your many to read piles? I think that was funny that on your bio it says you not only have one to read pile, there's many of them, which I
There are
think a
multiple.
fellow bookworm myself, I relate.
Right? Because I just like I filled up, I got a cart specifically for the books I need to read, and it's pretty full now. And I've been wanting to support independent bookstores, so I've
Yeah.
ordered more.
Yeah,
So
thank you for doing
current,
that, by the way. That was fantastic to see your Instagram story with all the different ones you included. You included one of my suggestions too, which I was really happy about. So,
oh yay. Yeah, that was fun to just go through and pick different bookstores and then go through and be like, okay, I have this list of books I wanted for a while. Let's let's do some shopping. So I'm currently reading. I'm going to horribly mispronounce the author's name, so I'm not going to try. But I started the Witcher books because
oh yeah.
I super adored the Netflix series, and for more
Yeah.
reasons than only Henry Cavill. Um, it's just a smart. I love seeing the female characters in that series. So yeah, I'm a few chapters into the first book, The Last Wish, and already like, yep, love this writer's style, love the voice, love the characters. I'm just going to order all of them.
Yes. Yeah, Yennefer and Geralt or Geralt are so captivating. I love that show, and that's probably on my next to read as well. So I might collect those sometime soon. But glad to hear you're enjoying them.
Yeah, I can't wait to read more.
And lastly here, what is one of the things you're most excited about for the future of Star Wars? And also, what does Star Wars mean to you at the end of the day?
I'm really excited that we have Disney Plus and have more opportunities for TV series that we know that stories that may not otherwise be told on the screen because they just didn't make sense for a 2-hour film. So in that vein, super excited for Obi-Wan and Ewan McGregor to come back, but really just excited to see like the Cassian story. Like, let's pick some of these characters that deserve more screen time and dig into their story, even if it's only like 3 to 4 episodes. Like, I hope they take advantage of that and use that as well to tell different styles of stories, like maybe a caper or a romance or whatever it is. So yeah, hope they do lots with Disney Plus. And at the end of the day, it's going to sound trite, but Star Wars really is to me about hope. And when the Jedi are at their best and they're not fighting a war, perhaps, they try to help others. I think sometimes their rules kind of bind them in ways that aren't helpful, but it's about hope, and it's about putting a hand out to people who are in need and helping in whatever way you can. And that's always important. It feels especially resonant currently in our times.
Absolutely. We need hope at this point. We need to reach out to other people and help them.
Yeah, that season 5 episode where of Clone Wars where Ahsoka leaves, where the fortune cookie was never give up hope, no matter how dark it seems. Like, that's Star Wars kind of in a nutshell to me.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, I think that's one of the most resonant themes of the entire franchise. So, and I think, like you said, we need that now more than ever. But Amy, thank you so much, though, for coming on Friends of the Force today. It was so lovely to have you. You're always welcome here on the show. But where can our listeners find some more of your work? And also, do you have anything coming up that you'd like to plug?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, first of all, for having me on the show. Folks can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Amy_geek. They can find my writing at Nerdist and occasionally at StarWars.com. I try to do that. And upcoming, I have some exciting book news in the Star Wars realm that I'll be able to announce at some point. I have a book coming up. Yay! I have a book coming up called Kid's Guide to Fandom that is announced. That's coming out next year. And I should have a couple fun articles coming up soon in issues of Star Wars Insider.
Fantastic. Well, once again, thank you so much. Stay safe out there. And we're excited for maybe the next time we have you on. So thank you once again.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you all for listening to this episode of From a Certain Point of View here at Friends of the Force. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You can also join our Patreon at patreon.com/Friends of the Force. Thank you to our current patrons, Cheryl, Michael Condon, Nadia, Neil Lowry, T, and Rachel. And we are also a part of the Star Wars Escape Pods network. Go check out some of our sister shows, including the Geeky Bubble podcast, Sky Talkers, and Unmistakably Star Wars. And we aim at promoting positivity in the fandom. So until next time, folks, we're all ones with the Force. We're all friends of the Force, and may the Force be with you always.